A lot of people are loving it. Those who start writing the TypeScript just claims that I don't want to go back into writing JavaScript. So what's this all fun about TypeScript? Are we missing anything? Not at all. Today we're starting a brand new series on the TypeScript, and eventually as we go further you will have the full knowledge and full writable skills so that you can transform from JavaScript to TypeScript. But before going further there, I would like to just give you an introduction what TypeScript is and should you be even writing TypeScript at all on the first place. There is a lot of hurry in the market that I just want to jump into TypeScript. I don't even want to learn JavaScript. But that is not the case. That is not how it should be started. It should be started with JavaScript. And there is a reason behind it. I'll walk you through with that. And I'll also walk you through that why it is important and why even you should be writing JavaScript in the first place or shouldn't be. That is the big question that we are answering. So welcome to the series on the TypeScript, and we will be running this series into a fast-paced mode. I'll be pushing up a lot of videos, so go ahead, buckle up, and let's get started with TypeScript. So TypeScript, obviously you want to learn it, and everybody knows one thing about TypeScript. I'm pretty sure in case you are living unless and until under a rock, you have heard about that this is a JavaScript, the classic yellow icon, this is a TypeScript. Often called as the TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. That means everything that you can do in JavaScript that is already available in TypeScript, and a lot more is available to that. But that is a kind of a true statement, but not accurately being contextualized by a lot of people. Yes, you have an accurate statement that TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, but it's not like it is adding more features to JavaScript. No, it doesn't give you more of callbacks. It doesn't give you more of arrow function. It just allows you to write JavaScript in a much precise manner so that your code faces a lot less error in the runtime. If there is any error, it is already being displayed to you while writing the code at the kind of when you're just typing them out in your favorite editor, maybe VS Code or something. That is where we want to just catch those errors and find that we shouldn't be doing something like that. So that is all your TypeScript. It is not going to give you a new loop. It is not going to give you a classes or new modules. It is not going to give you anything new. In fact, all the code that you write in the TypeScript is finally compiled into JavaScript. Not only that, even though your code editor might be yelling at you with some squiggly line about the TypeScript code, still you are allowed to compile stop this behavior. That's all it does. For example, let's just say you have null. You're allowed to add a to value to the null, and on top of that there is undefined, and you're allowed to add a to undefined and get another thing like to and nan, not a number. This is all not the quirky behavior of JavaScript, but rather your way of you haven't been concerned about the types of JavaScript. There is an explanation in the documentation of JavaScript that what behavior is going to kick in or what behavior is going to empower that. But apart from MDN, we haven't read the documentation of JavaScript, which are being the language specification given by ECMAScript. They are all right here. But the idea is I shouldn't be reading that much on the first place. I should be focused on building my application with the type safety. And that is where the TypeScript comes into the picture. So in this series, you're going to be mastering the TypeScript. So subscribe to the channel and we're going to be walking through, in fact, rolling coasting through this ride of type safety with the TypeScript. I hope you're all excited. A lot of videos are coming in. Get subscribed and let's catch you up in the next video. Hey there everyone, Nitesh here, back again with another video. And before we even move further in the TypeScript, even its installation process, I want to make this absolutely clear that what TypeScript is and what it isn't. In this video, I'll focus on what TypeScript is not. And this will help you to understand TypeScript in a better way, and the perspective of the TypeScript is going to change. A lot of people believe that TypeScript is a new programming language, which honestly is not a 100% true statement. There is a little bit difference in understanding the TypeScript. So let's get our vision clear first, and then in the next video we'll move on the installation part and the environment setup so that we can start writing TypeScript. But before that, let's clear our perspective about what TypeScript is. In order to understand what TypeScript is, you need to understand is the simple statement what TypeScript does for you. The simple idea behind the TypeScript is static checking. That's the only job, and yes, that's the only one job that TypeScript has got for you. The static checking is something which is present in many languages, especially the languages such as Java or maybe even Golang. A lot of languages are built in with the static checking. And what does the static checking means? That whenever you're writing the code, the parser of the language or the entire syntax of the language is constantly being analyzed by the IDEs. But not in the case of JavaScript. Whatever you write is just okay for the JavaScript. And when the code executes in the browser or in the engine like Node environment or anything, then only the errors of JavaScript are being thrown at your face. And at that time you just say, that's wrong, and you need to rerun the code itself. But it would be really a great help if there is a static checker which checks my code as I try to write it. For example, I'm trying to access an object which is not yet defined. If something can analyze my code and can give me a hint that that object doesn't exist in the object properties, then obviously it's much more easier for me. For example, when we are trying to add a few numbers and then one of the number is not a number, maybe a string, then if somebody helps me in giving me a squiggly line that, hey, that is not going to work, so that is great for me. And again, the level of the detail that which one is going to stop you from doing something and not stop you, that's all about the static checking. So just to repeat, TypeScript is just for static checking. It just analyzes your code and help you to understand that you might be running into a potential error without even running the code and getting the errors at the runtime itself. That's all it does. So I hope you understand that. The whole job of the TypeScript is simply to analyze the code. That's it. That's all it does. Now, on top of that, I'll also walk you through with an example as well, that it just checks and gives you a hint about that, yeah, you might be doing something wrong. But yes, it is still possible that your code might be giving you squiggly lines or errors, and still you may export this entire code into JavaScript and that might run absolutely well. And I'll walk you through with a couple of more kind of a misheard concepts about TypeScript, that hey, with the TypeScript you write less code and it does build the JavaScript code for you, so that is way more code. In fact, reverse is the true. In the TypeScript you write a lot more code compared to JavaScript, and sometimes even I have seen 50 lines of code are being compiled into just 10 lines of JavaScript. Yes, but it is worth it. I'll walk you through with that as well. So first, how the development process works. You write all of your code in .ts format, which is a simple TypeScript. When you're building components like React or something, I have seen people use a simple extension of .tsx, which is also totally fine. It has nothing to do. It is just a mixture of TypeScript plus the JSX kind of a syntax. So this is kind of a same component thing. Basically, your HTML is baked into the system. I'll walk you through with that as well. But the whole idea behind the TypeScript is you write your TypeScript code, and that code is being transpiled into JavaScript. And there are a lot of fancy words here. It is compiled, it is transpiled. We'll work through with that. I'll give you a brief overview of what is the difference between them, what is the meaning of it, and how it is working. You can just simply say at this point of time that TypeScript code is being converted into JavaScript. That is a rather safe word to use right now. And then your JavaScript. And one thing, the most important thing to learn and to know for this video is TypeScript is a development tool. Yep, it is a development tool. Your project still runs in JavaScript. The code that you produce or you send to the production is still a pure 100% JavaScript code. So TypeScript is just a layer on top of JavaScript, which is 10, fictitious of course, and you can see that this is exactly what is producing. Now what TypeScript allows you to do, if let's just say I want to have a variable email, and that email comes from user.email. Now notice here there is a squiggly line. The error was given to me here that hey, this property doesn't exist. So TypeScript smartly just go through with your code and tells you that email was not available there. But notice here, most important thing here is, although this property was not there, but there is nothing which is stopping me to produce the equivalent JavaScript code. Yes, that is the most important thing. In fact, this might be a little bit surprising to you in the initial first look, that let's just say if you go ahead and say that I have a simple number 1, which is 3, and let's just say if we have a number 2, which is 3, and if I go ahead and say, hey, let's just call this one as sum, that is going to be equal to number 1, and we're going to go ahead and say number 2. Now notice here, if I go ahead and do a simple console.log, and I go ahead and say, hey, give me a sum, you might be thinking that JavaScript or TypeScript especially is going to just disallow you to do these kinds of things. You can see right now nothing is doing that. If I run this code, the code is transpiled, we get the same things as 33. Yes, there are ways to avoid this, I'll walk you through with that, but here we can see in the playground it is working fine. So it is very important to understand in depth about TypeScript, that what is allowed, what is not allowed, how we can enhance more of type safety in our JavaScript code, and that's exactly what we are going to learn in this video. So again, always remember, it's a development tool. Yes, there are a lot of keywords and everything that is new in this stuff, but it would be rather much more accurate to call it as a development tool instead of just a standalone language, because this language is too much dependent, in fact entirely dependent on JavaScript. It's just a wrapper around it. So let's go ahead. In the next video we'll be setting up an environment so that all of us can write some TypeScript on our own environment, and you can just set this up. Let's go ahead and catch up in next video. Hey there everyone, Hitesh here, back again with another video. All you have to do is first, property email does not exist on type. So what data is about to be coming from any resource, or what data your function is going to send out. What this all is about. We will have a dedicated video on it. Right now, to just get rid of this error, we're going to go ahead and say exports, then a colon, and that's it. This is going to remove the error temporarily and will give us a peace of mind that hey, don't worry about these squiggly lines. But I promise you we'll come back onto this one later on. Right now this is all good. Now this alone statement of putting a colon is really fundamental to this one. You click on greeting and notice it says that the greetings is a string. This is a peace of mind that yes, I'm declaring a variable which always, no matter what happens, is always going to accept the string. Later on, some other programmer who is working on the same project gets this variable and try to assign it a number as 6. This automatically stops me and saves me an error that hey, the type number is not assignable to type string because it's a number. You cannot do this. If anybody tries to declare, let's just say, a true value into it, it says, hey, that's also not allowed. You should not be doing it. That is what the safety that TypeScript actually gives you. Not only that, if I go ahead and remove this, and if I try to put up a dot, you can see all the methods that are being suggested to me, like pad ends and all of that. These are string methods. These are not methods which are meant for number. For example, let's just go ahead and declare another variable up here, which actually gets a number. So let's just call this one as my num, and that number is 4 or 6, whatever that is. And I go back up here and I say, hey, I want to use my num dot, and I want to use 2 uppercase. You cannot do it. Accidentally, this might happen, not from you maybe, but from person who is using your code base and is collaborating with you on the code. It says that, hey, property 2 uppercase does not exist on type number. Not only that, it also allows you to have more safety. For example, there is a greeting and I know that 2 uppercase or 2 lowercase exist in this one, and I can go ahead and run this one. But accidentally, maybe I'm not using suggestion, maybe I'm using Vim or other code editor, and I might have done this lowercase. And I can tell you, I have done this. I have done this, a lot of typos in the past. But TypeScript actually allows me to give a suggestion that, hey, Property to lowercase does not exist. Did you mean to lowercase? So it also helps me to get my indefined method. And as you train it more, it actually gets suggestions from your own code base as well. So that is really, really impressive and amazing. So far we have gone through with the very basic. We'll take it slow and steadily. So right now, all you have to learn is colon and a string. That's how you should be declaring the variable. Now, eventually in the later on videos, you'll realize that sometimes we don't even need to use this colon. It automatically infers the value and stops you doing mischiefs like adding later on number to the greetings. We will walk through in that. But right now, this is all. You have gone through with your very first idea of how TypeScript works, a little bit intro to the documentation, some assignment that you have to do in the comment section. And I'll catch you up in the next video where we'll explore a little bit more in depth of TypeScript. Let's catch up in the next one. And one more important thing, very important thing, you guys forgot to hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and do that. I would be really thankful for that. Let's catch up in the next one. Hey there everyone, Peish here, back again with another video, and welcome to the TypeScript series. Now through this series, I not only want to talk you through that how to write TypeScript, but I also want to get all the best practices that you should be using while using the TypeScript. So we'll be jumping through the documentation. We'll guide you briefly about what is there in it, and this video is not going to be too much intense. We'll just talk about numbers and booleans. We have already talked briefly about the string, and then I'll talk about the type inference, which is mostly should be used, but it is less being used. So let me walk you through with that. So here we are on to the documentation page, and as we scroll up here a little bit, we see that the primitive types that we are discussing, the string which we have already covered, and the rest two are numbers and booleans. So we need to cover them up. Now these are mostly used as primitive types, and string represent the values like this, and then the numbers. Now, interesting thing here, which you should get from the documentation directly, not from any YouTuber or from any blog article, but rather from the documentation directly. The JavaScript does not have special runtime value for integers, so there is no equivalent of int and float, and this is usually a lot of time an interview question as well. How do we define especially the integers or float in TypeScript? We don't. We just call them numbers, and that's how it is being that we have to infer. Now obviously you get all the values and methods that are there for the boolean. So later on, if I go ahead and say is logged in, I put up a dot, then we don't have much on the boolean. It's just the value of what is the value of this particular variable, true or false. That's all the methods that we have. Now here I want to bring your attention to something known as type inference. Now a lot of people, when they get started with TypeScript, they are very much excited about putting up annotation with every single thing, numbers and strings and boolean. But here what is we are doing as not so good practice. What we are doing here is we are making it too obvious. This is a numbers, and just after that we are putting up an equal sign and putting it as a number. Now this is too obvious to do. Now obviously there is another way of doing and dealing with that thing is, for example, maybe you are not dealing it like that, and maybe in the very next line you put up and say that hey, now user ID is going to get a value. Let's just say it's some value and a decimal value. This is still not a good practice because you are doing too obvious thing and you are trying to overuse your TypeScript. Don't do that. This is not a good practice at all. There are some places where these values or these annotation can be avoided. You can just simply avoid to have a type. For example, in this case, just a previous case where we were having this equal sign. Now in this case, whenever I use number, let's just say I go ahead and say number and I use a dot, not number actually, my bad. The user ID, and then I use a dot, let's just say to fix. And this is the method that I'm using. Now, if I hover onto the to user ID, it's obviously telling me that it's a number. And whenever you are type inference, that TypeScript is smart enough to get all the values. And if you're just assigning immediately, yes, this is still a TypeScript. You don't need to put colon every here and there in the entire TypeScript file. And in order to get output of that, we can simply go ahead up here and simply say tsc variables.tsc variables.me.ts, and this is still will get us all the values. Remember again, the syntax of colon boolean is a TypeScript syntax video. Hey, this is any. It could be this could be a simple string. Right now, still it is any. But there is nothing which is stopping me to return a true, and this is still accepting the value, which is not really a good case. Maybe just imagine you have declared these values and you are getting these values, but there is another developer who is working on the API call, and instead of just giving you a string based on which your entirety of your program is dependent, he has just returned you a true documentation, because that is the most important part of this video. So here's the documentation, and you can see in the documentation there is any and there is also no implicit any. Yes, the any actually is a gateway, and it tells you that any can have actually anything at all that you want to have, so that whenever you don't want a particular value to cause the type checking, so that's when you use any. Now note in the next one. Hey there everyone, in the next 3 or 4 functions which will give you that I'm facing. Another problem that I'm facing is if I go ahead and convert the function definition, that is acceptable, that is doable, or just